let's get started. Michael, if you will flip that screen to the next slide. Just a few notes before we begin. We still have some folks joining us. Hello, please keep your video off. Please keep your microphone muted. Please submit all questions in the chat box. I'm going to type in the chat box. Hi. So you should have received a little notification at the bottom of your screen. That is the chat box. So submit all of your questions there. I will be moderating the chat. So if you are having issues, concerns, if you can't hear me, if you can't hear Michael, just let us know in the chat and I will address that. This session will be recorded and available on YouTube, and you should receive an email within 24 hours from now with a link to view that. And if you are viewing this as a recording, feel free to email me at this email with any questions that you may have. And Michael, if you will flip to the next slide. So my name is Savannah Kierman, and I'm the Business Operations and Marketing Coordinator for the City of Bluefield Community and Economic Development. Sorry, on my screen froze. I serve the same role for the Bluefield, West Virginia Economic Development Authority. We are hosting this class because many of you have heard about our My Own Business Institute, MOBI, and that's why we were having office hours. And if you are not aware, the topic we're covering tonight and many more business-related topics are going to be covered in our online Entrepreneurs Bootcamp. We have 2 modules, starting a business and expanding your business. If you are interested in that, just shoot me an email afterwards and we'll get you started. Just so you know, BEDA, which is the Bluefield, West Virginia Economic Development Authority, was created to spearhead the Intuit Alorca project and work as a catalyst to continue developing Intuit's partnership to ensure sustainability. BEDA has taken on the role of ensuring growth opportunities, development, and mentorship to the region's business owners and entrepreneurs. We're thankful for the city's partnership with Intuit and Intuit's investment in you. We're so glad that you're here, and I would now love to introduce you to your instructor, Michael Johnson. Michael, you can take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Savannah, for this opportunity to, I guess, talk and speak about the subject at hand today. I'm calling it employment recruitment, and just want to let you know, first of all, disclaimer, I am not an attorney, and so this information should not be considered legal advice. You should seek counsel from your own situation. So I just want to kind of clear that up from the beginning. I do see that with the first poll that we have here, we have like 33% are currently managing employees and 33% not, and then another 33% who is curious. So that's a nice rounded 1/3%. So that's good to know. Kind of get an idea of our audience today. Today's really going to be about, and let me just make sure I turn this. All right. I'm going to take this, my presentation really is a perspective. It's some training that I do internally with our managers here. So some of you may be, you're already engaged in some type of a business or a management role, and this might just be old hat for you, and maybe it'll be a review, hopefully. Some of you, maybe this will be brand new material and information. Whatever your situation, I do hope that you can get some information out of this and some benefit from our learning today. If you have any questions, of course, as Savannah has explained, you can just put it in the chat box. I'll try to answer what I can. So let's dive right in. First of all, I just want to say, there's really no one magic interview process that is foolproof. From my experience, the more you do, the more comfortable you become with it. If you're already engaged in interviews, or if you've never done one, that first time can be very overwhelming and maybe a little inhibiting for you, because you don't know exactly what you're going to be doing, how it's going to go, what to expect. And that's what I'm hoping today we can discuss, is just giving some kind of a roadmap. My big thing is planning ahead. I'm one of those people who likes to have everything planned and laid out before you engage on that journey. And, some people like to work by the fly of their pants, and, whatever works for you, I suppose. But for me, I think sometimes, especially if it's new for you, it's probably better to have some type of plan ahead. So hopefully we'll be able to plan this and give you some consistency as you start this introduction. First, I'm just going to kind of give you an agenda. We're going to first talk about application process. Now, and again, this is just the process that we use here at Cole Harley-Davidson. We have 6 dealerships throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, so we have lots of managers in different departments, and so we have about 200 employees overall, and so we've come up with kind of a streamlined system and a way to kind of help, especially those who are in a management position for the first time. So they'll have an idea, a blueprint, if you will, on how to conduct interviews, what to do with the processes and things like that. So this is really designed for them. So this, hopefully, you can take a little bit about it, a little bit of information that we discussed today and apply it to your business. Or, if you can maybe even improve on it, whatever, that works for you. We're going to talk about the background checks. We'll talk about second interviews, reference checks, job offer, onboarding process, and engagement retention. I just felt like when I put this presentation together, I don't know, a couple of years ago, these are the highlights. These are the things that are really important, I think, to that new hire, that new process as you get involved. All right, let's talk first about application. Hopefully, all of you already have an application established. If you don't, I'll recommend that you do have a printed application or at least an online application so that they are available to you. It's something that's very important in the process of hiring employees. So that being said, that's part of the application process. It's going to be our first step. It's important to retain applications, first of all, at least 12 months plus 90 days is what our counsel advises in our particular situation, that you keep those on file 12 months plus 90 days. And what's the purpose of an application? Really, what are you looking for? Well, when you're looking at an application, you want to look at any type of field, experience, job length, the skills that are related to the job that's being posted, the compensation range, availability, your business scope. Those are some things that you will find out in the application process. And also, you want to be able to be able to look back and review the fact finding, because maybe at this point you've already received a resume. The application process, and some people ask, do I need to have both? Is the resume okay alone? And I would say no. I mean, you really need to have the application, and I say that because it's a legal document, and the resume is not. Plus, those who are experienced, that resumes can easily be fluffed. I mean, who's going to put the bad stuff on their resume? They always want to be really polished and look as most attractive as possible. So what the application will do then is kind of follow up. It's kind of a consistency. It's a litmus test, really, if you will. That is it really, are they consistent with what they put on the resume? Are the dates right? Are they correct? Also, you're signing a document, so you're asking specific questions, and when they sign off on that, you can use this as a reference that, look, you've said this, you've indicated that, and you've got your signature here. So consider that as well. You're going to ask specific questions on an application. Let me get my application sample here. One thing you want to make sure, again, if you've not constructed an application, or if you have, make sure that you are including your equal opportunity statement. That has changed recently. Those who work in the state of Virginia, some things have been included that was not once included in the state of Virginia. But you want to make sure that that's displayed and readily available. Also, it's going to be something that you want to be careful of as far as asking specific questions. You want to avoid, of course, asking anybody their date of birth on an application. You're just going to be really basically asking their personal information, such as name, address, Social Security, contact in case of emergency. I mentioned Social Security. Sometimes you might find people who are reluctant to give that information out. Just in the day that we live, it's concerning for some people, and I understand that it's not necessarily required by law, but it does help you as an employer to have that information, especially if you want to move forward in the process of hiring somebody. That Social Security number is going to come in handy on the background checks, because really there's not much you can do without that Social Security number. So that's the reason we always ask for it. Today we ask email address. You know, maybe 10 years ago that wasn't a common question on an application, but it is of utmost importance for us in the way that we engage in our activity in our business here, because all of our communication that we have primarily is through electronic communication. So that email is vital for us. We always like to ask, you know, the rate of pay that's expected. Many states do bar that question, so keep that in mind. In certain states, you know, when it comes to application and employments, you want to find out what your state does and what your state condones and does not. Like I said, many states do not allow you to ask that question on an application as far as compensation. We avoid, you know, the question by just asking someone, what is your expected pay? Now, sometimes they will answer, most of the time they will, but then a lot of times they'll put negotiable down. But it's always helpful as an employer to kind of get a starting point, so you can decide, you know, if it's something that you want to move forward with. You know, just like anything else, not any single question should be the premise on making any decision on a hiring practice. Some other questions we ask, of course, is your education. Where have you graduated? If you have expectations, if you have requirements for certain levels of education, that needs to be, you know, displayed probably in your posting. We also ask if there's any referrals, or even how and where you applied, where you got the information. That helps us as an employer to kind of gauge where our advertising dollars are going, or you know, or is it coming from social media? Is it coming from walk-ins? Is it coming from, you know, certain advertising units? Also, a new concept you want to be careful of, and what we just recently had to make a change to our application, is the conviction of any type of you know, legal aspect. There again, some states they call it ban the box. You may have heard that in some of your lingo or some of the instructions that you've had before. But there are certain states again who will disallow you from asking any type of questions about criminal experience. Now, in the state of West Virginia and the states in which we operate, that's not necessarily the case. So, but what we basically ask in this situation is, have you ever been convicted of a violation of the law except a simple possession of marijuana or a minor traffic violation? We now have had to add the possession of marijuana because now it is illegal for us to ask that specifically. So that's how do we kind of phrase that question. And it's an opportunity for you to engage once that question is answered by the candidate. You know what? Tell us a little bit more about that in detail. And of course, we always ask about prior work record and experience. We always have an agreement and a certification notice that they sign off on. And so all that's really important. I know that was very quick and very, very brief as far as the employment application. My recommendation would be for you to, you know, seek some counsel, some legal counsel, if you do not have one already constructed, that you do get some counsel on that and how, and maybe, you know, some advice. Or, you know, and we do regularly. I have this updated because that's also very important, because laws change constantly. Those who are in the HR field know that, or if you're a business manager, you understand that these types of laws are constantly changing. So it's important that you're always updating, looking at the information, and making sure that it's current. All right. So application is what we consider our first step. Our next step is really the interview, and what sometimes we consider an interview is sometimes just, you know, someone might walk in and drop off the application or drop off a resume. You know, that's always, you know, we like to encourage our employees, or our managers specifically, is, you know, take that opportunity. If you've got 5-10 minutes, talk with that potential candidate. You know, most of the time, our best employees are once our customers. So, you know, use that opportunity and kind of find out some questions. You know, so a lot of times we consider that first interview. And when you're asking that, you know, you want to talk about your culture a little bit. Give us about 3 to 5 minutes. Spend some time talking about what your culture is. And a lot of people, you may have heard that term. What is culture? What does that even mean? Well, what I like to do when I think about culture and what I tell my managers is it's what we value. What is it that you value as an employee or as a business, as a company? Is it your customer care? Is it your team efforts, your dedication to loyalty, accountability? Whatever that is important to you is what your culture is all about. So to use that time. Second, outline the job duties. Take about 3 to 5 minutes, discuss what's going to be expected so they'll have an idea. Sometimes that will help you at the very moment, at that very time, determine whether or not this is going to be a good candidate or not, and as well as for them. They may look and ask questions about that specific job and think, wow, I'm not sure that's really for me. So, take that time. Spend 10 to 15 minutes on prepared questions. Use questions that, of course, are that prevent any type of bias. You want to make sure that your questions are open-ended. And what I mean by that is don't ask questions that simply reply yes or no answer. You want them talking. As a hiring manager, you want to make sure you get them talking. You don't want to spend half the time engaged in all the conversation. So, give them the information that they need, but then ask questions that will promote them some thinking. And here are some questions that you might want to consider. What do you know about our company? How do you typically deal with stress? Tell me about a time when you had to accomplish a task with someone who was particularly difficult to get along with. These are some probing questions, and they can reveal a lot. Now, honestly, these might be questions that they do not expect in an interview, and that's probably good because, that will kind of give you an idea of how quickly, what is their business acumen? Are they, quick on their feet? Can they give, in a lot of ways, it'll just really give them an idea of how they deal with the stress. Are there any concerns you would like to address regarding, conducting a background check? I'll always encourage our managers to ask that question. Let's see, what else? This is a good question you might want to consider. When we contact previous employees, what are they likely to tell us in regards to your dependability? So you really haven't addressed, if they have a problem with attendance. You've been more little constructive in asking the question, what would they say? And that gives it a little softer appeal. Also, I always like to encourage our managers, state your attendance policy, whatever that might be. Let them know what it is right up front. That way you can get that out of the way. Because most of our, a lot of our issues as far as when it comes to terminations have to do with attendance, because people just, sometimes they can't adhere to, what the expectation is. So if that's laid out from the beginning, it makes it a whole lot easier. All right. Avoid personal questions. Use an evaluation form. Yes, and that's always, and there are 2 reasons. One is to help you as the interviewer to keep a track. But it also helps guide the conversation. And when especially if you've interviewed hundreds of people, 50 people, whatever, 20 people, it's so easy to forget, who did what and what did, all of that comes as confusion when you interview so many people. Having an evaluation form will kind of keep you on track, knowing what questions. Plus, it's consistent. And that's really the most objective way when you're hiring a candidate or an employee. The more objective you are, the better off you are going to be in that process of hiring someone, because you've asked them all the same question. You've been very fair and objective in how you've delivered the interview. So again, evaluation form, very, very important. Look for nonverbal signals. Provide an opportunity for questions by them. Obviously, but they did not come prepared for questions. That should be a signal for you as well, wondering, I wonder why. So one thing you want to make sure, we talked a lot about questions you should ask. There are, of course, questions you should avoid, mainly anything regarding race, color, creed, nationality, anything that's listed in that equal opportunity statement, whether it be sex, sexual orientation, pregnancy, disability. Do not ask those questions. I know that probably seems obvious for most people, but you'd be surprised some things that we will come up with. Names or numbers of family members. Don't ask about church or, because all this can lead, certain questions can lead to the first statement of the equal opportunity. It might give them some revelation of the religion. And again, you can't ask any questions regarding that. So don't ask about the name of churches. Don't ask about the year of graduation. Well, why not? Well, obviously that will tell them, their age. And again, you can't ask any questions about age. Don't ask about marriage. A lot of these types of questions can lead to discriminatory accusations that can be brought on to you. I'm not the type of person who constantly want to build fear about everything that happens in a particular conversation. But you just have to be aware. It is possible, even during an application or even an interview process, if you are discriminatory in any way, that person can come back and litigate a case against you. So you just always want to be very concerned about how that is transpired and be consistent. That's always the most important thing. But talking about the nonverbal skills, so employees who become at work usually what they are at home. If you're a good interviewer, you're always going to look at an applicant from top to bottom. Pay attention to their dress or their physical appearance. Take time to note any personal hygiene. I mean, their fingernails, are they dirty? Are they neat? What about piercings, body markings, hair, tattoos? I mean, of course, it depends on your particular company. Those things may or may not be something that you're looking for, but whatever is your structure, your values, your culture. It's an easy opportunity to take that interview process and observe all that. Especially in a small company, interview it's your advantage maybe even to walk somebody out to their car. So you'll be amazed just what you can find or see in somebody's car, because that's it's a nasty, it's a journey to have a whole collection of trash. Because most likely that's their traveling office. So they may have a more tendency to kind of resemble that in their regular situation at work. So it's all in what you're looking for. But take those opportunities. You don't have to make any comments, and nor should you. But it does not help. It does not hurt anybody to take an opportunity to look and see what those are. All right. And then of course, what you want to do, explain the next steps.
Interviews are a critical part of the hiring process, but many managers don't know how to conduct an interview well. Here's some advice. First, stick to a structure. This sets up the parameters of the interview and keeps you both focused. Be sure to manage your time accordingly. 1. Give a brief description of the company. 2. Outline the job duties. 3. Ask the applicant questions. 4. Give the candidate an opportunity to ask you questions. Try not to talk too much. Talking about 30% of the time is a good rule of thumb. Watch nonverbal signals. Eye contact, appropriate dress, and self-confidence can tell you a lot about the sincerity and professionalism of your potential candidate. For example, is the candidate sitting comfortably yet upright in his chair? Slouchy posture speaks loudly about sloppy work and low self-esteem. Try not to be too chummy. Keep all your questions job-related. If you spend the interview chatting, you may make a hiring decision because you like the candidate versus whether the person is truly qualified for the job. Prepare. Come up with questions in 4 categories: fact-finding, creative thinking, problem-solving, and behavioral. Here are some examples. Tell me about your most challenging and least challenging job. Tell me about a job you like the most and least, and why. Tell me about a time when you tried to do something and failed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What things are most important to you in a work situation? Describe some situations in which you have worked under pressure or met deadlines. What qualifications do you have that you feel would make you successful here? Why are you leaving your present job? In your last position, what were the things that you liked the most or the least? Tell me about your most significant accomplishment. If I spoke to your previous employer, what would he or she say are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? What motivates you the most? Describe what you feel would be an ideal work environment. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidelines, as well as federal and state laws, prohibit asking certain questions of a job applicant. Be sure to avoid asking about the candidate's age, national origin, or race. This includes asking where they were born or where their family is from, religion, marital status, including asking if they have or intend to have children, mental history, or medical information. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, employers may not ask about the existence, nature, or severity of a disability or health condition. The following acceptable alternative questions can be asked on the application or the interview, but be careful. If you ask them incorrectly, you can easily find yourself in a sticky situation. So only use these if you have a bona fide reason to ask. Do you have any responsibilities that conflict with the job's attendance or travel arrangements? Are you able to work in the United States on an unrestricted basis? Are you able to perform the duties on the job description with or without reasonable accommodations? If hired, can you provide proof that you are at least 18 years of age? Do you have any conflicts that would prevent you from working the schedule discussed? What languages do you speak fluently? Will you have any problem working overtime if required? Would anything prohibit you from making a long-term commitment to the position? For more tips on how to screen resumes, conduct phone and live interviews, or background checks, visit us at www.turnkeydoc.com.
All right, so we've talked about the first step, the application process, the second step, the first interview, and now we're moving on to the third step. For us, it's the background check.
And I have launched.
We have a poll.
Yeah, go ahead. I have launched a poll, so if you are looking away from your computer screen, if you will come back and fill out this poll for us, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you're joining by phone, you probably won't be able to see the poll, and that is okay. I will email you the video afterwards, and you'll be able to see the results of that poll on the video. Fear not, it will all be okay. And I'm going to let this run for a couple more seconds. 6 of you have responded. There's 5 of you who haven't responded. I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna ask you to fill out this poll. So I'm gonna end this in about 10 seconds. All right. Oh, ending. I'm gonna share those results with you, Michael.
Okay, awesome. So we have 50%, 57% who do, 29% who do not. No, but we intend to start, 14%. Drug screenings, we have 57 who do perform them, 14% who do not, 29% say they do not, but they intend to start. And finally, the last question, does your company perform social media checks? And 29% of you said that you do. Okay. Awesome. That's great to know. Good information.
We got credit checks at the bottom, actually. You and we did not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think scroll down there. Did you see how many were there?
Yes, there is. No one performs credit checks. 71
okay.
do not. I should word that weird. 71% do not perform credit checks, but 29% would like to start. Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much. All right, so that's good. That's very good information. So, once we moved on to the background check, we have to make the decision. Do we want to move forward with this candidate? And for us, again, this is just the structure that we do internally. There's not necessarily one particular way of handling the process or even the steps. I mean, sometimes you might do one before the other. This is just the process that we do, and it works well. What I like to have our managers do is, when you finally finish that interview, that first interview, you want to ask yourself, do I like this person? Would I buy from this person? And, if the questions are no, then, it's probably not even a point to move forward with the background check. However, if you say yes, I do like this person as an individual, and yes, I would probably buy something from this person, then those probably would be a good indicator at this point to move forward. And so that's when we go into the background step. And we do criminal background checks. So we use this information to determine really if there are any risks associated with the hire. You'll notice I did have motor vehicle. The MVR, that is something that we, of course, because we are an automobile or a vehicle type business dealership, we do an MVR or DMV check for everybody, regardless of your position. It's for our insurance purposes. That's just something that we do. A lot of businesses obviously do not. But going on to the next step, which is the background. It's helpful to do a background investigation. It can help determine if there are any risks associated with the hire. For instance, is there any theft, violence, or any type of battery? That might be a concern for your particular company. And you have to be careful about this. Once you have this information, what do you do with it? Some states won't even allow you to ask anything about the criminal until after you've even offered them a job. So, for us, we can determine whether or not, what type of person, when you're looking at a criminal background, it depends on your position. If you're working in a business, or if this position is handling money, or if they have access to equipment or things like that, it is something that you would probably want to use. And if there is a criminal history, that might be something for a point of discussion. With the criminal background checks, you want to work with an agency who can do those for you. I wouldn't recommend that you just randomly go ask questions about a background. Use a bona fide quality in background provider. I have used 2 or 3 in my history. We use one now, and not to promote anyone specifically, but we use one that we just recently acquired, probably the last 6 months. And one reason why we switched was we were finding out that the provider that we used before would only go back for about 10 years. And and this one will actually go back for the entire history. If any type of criminal records out there, it will go back and find it. And sometimes it's become necessary for us to have that information, whether it has been longer than 10 years or not. But with the process of criminal background check, you do have to have them sign some type of an agreement, a disclosure statement. Again, the background provider, vendor, whomever you use, will provide that literature and that information for you. We actually do it now electronically. Before, it was all done on paper. We'd have to have every applicant, fill out a form and all of this, sign off on the disclaimer. With our new system, all we simply do is send them an email, and they can actually just go through and sign that online. So, either way, whatever's available to you and your company, it's something that they will handle themselves. What you do with the information is what's important, that you want to make sure you don't discriminate anybody based on certain criteria. So keep that in mind. We also do drug screening. Some folks do this, some folks don't. We have a strong policy here that we are a drug-free environment. So we do drug screen for everybody. Now, and this is one of those situations, if it turns up and there is some type of drug in their system, that's an automatic disqualification. So we kind of stop the process at that point. With the criminal background check, you probably, depending on the position that you're hiring for, depending on what the offense was, if it justifies one having a conversation, or if it's something that it's not important, so therefore you're not going to consider it, or if it's something that you would disqualify for. And if it is something that you would disqualify for, then that sets up a new process. And again, your vendor will explain that to you. There are certain approvals, certain letters that have to be sent out at that time. If you do decide to not hire somebody based upon that evidence of that criminal background, you have to provide them with a copy. They have to have an opportunity to respond, because perhaps something on that background information is incorrect. And so that's the reason why you have to have that information provided to them at that time. So keep that in mind. let's see, moving on. Drug screening, we do usually a 10 to 12 panel screening. In most cases, we here in our Bluefield location, we actually have a company who will come in and do them for us on site, which is very helpful, not only for pre-employment, but for also post-accident or reasonable suspicion, which is, that in itself is, there's a whole different topic that we can discuss. But that's the reason why we do drug screening. We do it for pre-employment, we do it for post-accident, and then we also do it for reasonable suspicion. Certain companies are allowed to do random if you're working for, industrial type manufacturing, things like that. That is something that's probably you would want to do on a regular basis. Since that's not our business, we do not do that, nor are we really allowed to do that. So that's our drug screening. And then finally, social media. So, it doesn't hurt to look at social media. It's there, it's readily available, everybody uses it. It can also help determine, what type of professionalism do they have? Do they have, sociability skills, or are they reckless? You can determine a lot from some, by just looking at the social media. We'll caution you, the equal opportunity EEOC compliance, they want to caution you when you're looking at social media, because when you're looking at a Facebook or a LinkedIn account or whatever, you're going to find out some personal information that you're really not supposed to know, upon that initial contact. You might be able to find out that they're married, you might find out their race, you might find out their religion. So all of that can be revealed in that social media investigation that you're performing. So, most attorneys will probably suggest, rather than the hiring manager making that search or investigation or whatever you want to call it with the social media, they would recommend maybe a third party doing that on their behalf, which is what we do a lot of here. I don't directly hire anybody, so a lot of times the HR department, I will take care of that portion of it. And if there are any questions or any red flags that come up, I can kind of maybe just have a discussion with the manager who is planning to hire. So keep that in mind. And finally, your credit check. Now, a lot of you, I don't think, or many of you, did credit checks. Again, we don't do them for every employee. This is dependent upon the position that we're hiring for. If it's someone in a senior position, a manager position, or anybody who's going to be involved with handling money or finances, we will have a credit check. And it's beneficial, really, for us to kind of determine what type of experience they have as far as paying off debt, and the responsibility. Credit check can really reveal a lot about a person. So we do that just as needed and depending on the position. All right. Now let's move on to our next step. Our fourth step is the second interview. And the second interview is going to be much like the first interview. And again, sometimes it doesn't even take, a second interview. I always like to advise it, just because at this point it's an opportunity for you to bring another person in, get another department manager to come in, or somebody, maybe a supervisor in that particular department, to come in and give us, they can ask some additional questions. They can get their opinion and their take on this particular candidate. So it certainly does not does not hurt to have that second interview. It's usually the second interview, if you do this type of process, it's going to be a little more formal probably than the first one. So, during that time, again, you want to take this opportunity, first of all, to ask any questions you may have missed in that first opportunity that you had. Ask questions about the application. Why is there this gap in your history? There's an opportunity to talk about the background history. If you've got some things you want to discuss, what was this? We had one the other day that came back. They had received a citation because they had not a a fishing license. And those are some examples. We're not going to just disqualify somebody because 10 years ago they had a fishing license worn on their background. So that's what I mean. That's the reason it's important that you look at it and you scrutinize those, and based upon your culture and then really what your need is. Take the time to talk maybe a little bit about benefits, your pay structure, tour the facility, introduce staff. Ask your questions. Have some additional questions, follow-up questions you want to use. And as we mentioned before, open-ended questions are always important. Always avoid those personal questions. You want to speak less, let them listen, and listen more. Use the evaluation form. Look again for the nonverbal signals. And again, provide them opportunities for questions. And of course, explain your next steps. If it's someone you aren't interested in, let them know that. You'll be in contact with them should they decide to pursue any type of employment opportunities. All right, reference check. This is our fifth step. So we're going to do another poll here.
Yes, we're launching another poll. So if you will all please fill out this poll. Wow, you guys are super fast at polling on this one. So hopefully this means you are all engaged and enjoying this topic, because I sure am. This is great information. I'm going to go ahead and stop this poll because pretty much all of you have answered.
Yay! So we got 50% who do, wonderful, 38 who do not, and 13 who said we don't, but we intend to. Awesome. Okay, so reference checks. Okay, I will be upfront and honest with everybody right now. I think they can be very important, and you want to use them. But I can tell you also, it's in today's world, it's difficult to get really anything beyond an employment date for most people. And all of those HR folks out there who are in HR understand why. We're always been cautioned, from legal attorney, that we don't provide any additional information other than that. Sometimes maybe a title and maybe an hourly rate. But beyond that, we definitely don't provide. And primarily, we're concerned about litigation because, again, there's that possibility they could, that ex-employee can come back and, provide some type of litigation against you. And so we were always very cautious about that. But in the instance that you can actually get to talk with somebody and get a, substantial reference, then by all means, I would take the opportunity. And when you're doing that, always confirm the dates of employment, position held, relationship to the candidate, your willingness to take, their willingness to take on responsibility, their level of motivation, describe their work ethic, ability to communicate, and are they eligible for rehire? And again, I know that's probably asking a lot because you're probably not going to get that from most references. But if it's worth the effort of taking the time and getting what you can from that person. A lot of times, you can as a business owner, as a business person, a lot of times, I may go to another HR professional who, if a current candidate comes to us who's worked from, I will get, a kind of off the record a recommendation of, what are your true thoughts? Do you have any hesitations? Is there anything? Not necessarily you have to give me details, but, do you have any hesitations? And they can just give me a yes or no. And sometimes that's all I need, especially you've got down to 2 candidates here and you really want to find one that's going to be the best fit. Sometimes that's all it takes. So again, reference checks. All right, assessment. Now this is something that, this is taking that a little bit, addressing that candidate, that hiring situation one step further. And again, assessments, that can be time consuming. It depends on your culture, your environment, if it's something that's worth your time and your investment, because they can be pricey. We do assessments, but primarily only for our top management, and we don't always do them. It just depends on the situation. But we have used them in the past, and we use a predictive assessment because what it will do is it will basically tell us the compatibility, training, goal setting. It gives you a little bit about their behaviors, team building skills, job stressors, behavioral styles. A lot of times it will tell you, are they assertive? Or, what is their sociability like? Are they calm? Do they conform? Not necessarily that any one of those things are good or bad, because it really will depend upon your job and what type of position it is. Because you might need somebody who is assertive, or someone who's not assertive in that particular position. But if it is something that you would like to do, it sometimes it's worth that extra effort and that extra step. And again, we usually only use that for our top management when we do use them. All right. Our next step is the job offer. We will give them, the opportunity. My manager will go once they've gotten everything back. It's an acceptable criminal check. They have an acceptable credit check. It's a clean drug screening. At that point, we'll have a signed pay plan or bonus commission plan, whatever it is, a signed job description. And we'll say, hey, you're hired, or we'll set up the meeting. So that's kind of the process that we use here at Harley-Davidson, and it's pretty productive. I think everyone tends to follow it most of the time, and so then we want to think about onboarding. So what is onboarding? Onboarding is the integration process used to ensure a smooth transition of a new employee into the roles and organization. And you may or may not have heard of onboarding. What does that even mean? Well, your job isn't finished once you've hired somebody. That you've just begun, especially as a manager. Your work is just now beginning. So honestly, onboarding is the key to retention, and and how you do your onboarding really is huge in making that first impression on that candidate. Especially, you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of investment in going through this hiring process. You want to make sure you don't just stop there. And because that can be so discouraging for that new hire. They're already nervous, they're already concerned, it might be a transition, maybe they've had to move their family, so you want to make that first impression, matter. So, clarify policy expectations and your purpose. Talk about your culture and what values, your norms. Your connections, the organization, tell them where to go eat, especially if they're new to the area, give them some recommendations. So those are all part of the onboarding process. And the thing you want to know about onboarding, it's not just once a year. It's not just one time. It's all throughout the year, 365 days. Be prepared and have everything ready. Make the first day special. Buy them lunch, give them free stuff, have a special parking spot for them. The new hire orientation, discuss your benefits and policy. You have a checklist. Again, not only for you, but for them. I can't stress that enough. I know I'm a visual person, so I like to have all of that available and checked off, and it keeps me consistent. Have check-in times at 30 days, at 60 days, 90 days. I have sets of questions here. I won't go into detail because I know we're running out of time. But 30 days, ask the questions. How are they doing? How are they getting along? What about your social? What about your supervisor? These are all beneficial not only to you but to them. It tells them, that employee, that you are engaged, and what they say matters. Okay. Let's see. First day, make sure you have the paperwork. Show them that you are prepared, you're organized, because it's going to, again, it goes back to that first impression. Have, if it's pens and pads, have it ready, especially if you're going to be having to take some notes. All the log information that they need for all of their systems, have them ready, their email accounts ready, the phone system's working. There's nothing more troubling as a new employee to go in and have none of that ready for you. It doesn't show that you're going to be appreciated, and it makes you wonder about that organization in the first place, the legitimacy. So have all that ready. Assign a teammate. We always have like a team buddy. It's always beneficial to kind of guide them for those first few weeks. Okay. And let's finally talk about retention, because, again, we put our heart and soul into all of this. We put our investment, our time. The next step and the final step really is to keep those people here. So you want to make sure that they are engaged, and that's all about motivating. You want to make sure that you are engaged, you're goal setting, you're rewarding folks, you're recognizing them, the relationships, being positive, you're including them, and any sense of opportunity, and make sure that they have a sense of purpose. I'm going to have a brief presentation here all about team building.
As a leader, you must contend with the fact that many of the employees you lead will not be as self-motivated as you are. They will benefit from a little extra motivation. Understanding motivation by a quality fit with the work, meaning they actually like what they do. Extrinsic motivation refers to motivation resulting from any number of external things we might do in an attempt to stimulate new motivation in others. The vast majority of writing and thinking and tools in the area of employee motivation focus on forms of extrinsic motivation, new ways to entice people to do more and better work. This isn't bad in and of itself, but it is not the most productive view of motivation. The most effective way to think about motivation is in a balanced manner that incorporates both intrinsic and extrinsic factors, with a clear emphasis on supporting intrinsic motivation. Think of it this way. Sometimes we become so focused on using things such as money and other types of rewards that the rewards can become a much bigger focus than the work itself. That is an outcome you wish to avoid. From the intrinsic-extrinsic perspective, there are three major approaches to employee motivation. The first two are the most popular, and they are extrinsic in nature. I'm referring to goal setting and the use of rewards and recognition. These are popular because they are the easiest to understand and implement. The third approach is somewhat less popular, but actually far more important. This one deals with relationships and the work environment and how they can often bolster and support intrinsic motivation. Nothing motivates a person more than high-quality relationships in a positive work environment. So, let's address four key aspects of the work environment and relationships at work that have been proven many times to be great explanations for employee motivation. Research on motivation is very clear. The quality of relationships at work matters, and none matters more than the relationship an employee has with his or her direct supervisor. In fact, the number one reason that professionals voluntarily leave jobs is bad boss relationships. As a leader, realize that while you are not trying to become best friends with the members of your team, you are trying to develop positive, helpful, and supportive relationships. Remember, for every employee, their view of the quality of their relationship with you is the lens through which everything else at work is seen. The next motivating aspect is a feeling of inclusion. You build a sense of inclusion by genuinely seeking employee input on important matters. Make them feel like you're partners, not mere employees. Third is a sense of opportunity. You create real belief in opportunity when others see that great performance is justly rewarded. This helps the team see the workplace as a fair place. Last but not least, you want to build a sense of purpose. You accomplish this by sharing comments about why the work matters and how the team's work actually helps others. Use your comments, notes or comments from others in the organization supported by your team, or from customers or clients you ultimately support. When you build positive relationships with your employees and build a sense of inclusion, opportunity, and purpose, you will have done a great deal to support intrinsic motivation. Here is one additional quick but very important piece of advice. Never rely on fear as a motivator. It is important to understand that while fear is effective in obtaining short-term compliance from your employees, there are two huge problems. First, using these tactics causes resentment, which can simmer for a long time. Second, use of fear stops you from achieving the one thing that is much better than short-term compliance, which is long-term behavioral commitment. Fear and negativity should be very rare in a productive workplace. Motivating others is not mysterious. You'll need tactics that support both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Both are important, but always remember, nothing is more motivational than being a part of positive and supportive relationships at work.
Excellent information. So remember, our steps are application, first interview, background check, second interview, reference checks, job offer, onboarding, and engagement retention. I want to thank everybody. If anybody have any questions, you want to comment, or if you want to contact me, by all means, I welcome you. We can always have a discussion, and I'll be glad to engage.
We did have two questions for you.
Okay.
For starters, first is, how often do you find that a candidate will interview exceptionally well, but something from their background check or their drug test poses a red flag? How would you move forward?
Well, it depends. Sometimes you want to make sure like we mentioned before, take that opportunity. I mean, if there's a red flag, there is nothing wrong with asking that person to explain. And I encourage that, and I encourage my manager to do that. Have a conversation. Tell me about what this is, whatever that might be. Explain to me the situation. And sometimes it's legitimate after you've had that conversation with them. It makes sense. A lot of times it goes, it's your gut feeling. Are they telling the truth? And if it makes sense, you feel like it's a situation where they've been a changed person. You can see that there's some maturity there. There's growth. You might want to say, okay, I feel confident that this is going to be a good move for us. But if not, go with that feeling, go with that information, and then probably dodge that bullet.
Awesome. Before I ask the second question, I can see some people may be trying to get off, but important information.
Okay.
Please don't leave yet. We will be hosting additional classes. I mean, this is going to go on forever and ever and ever. There are different topics. Basically, so if you're viewing this as a recording and you would like to hear about other class offerings, shoot me an email. But anyone is welcome to attend our webinars. If you are local to the region, such as both Bluefields, McDowell, Mercer, Monroe, Raleigh, Summers, Wyoming, or Tazewell, Virginia, and you have or need information regarding to this topic or any other topic, contact us because we're constantly finding different topics to host office hours on. And if it's just you who has an issue, we will connect you with a Create Opportunity partner. Now, there is a survey that I ask that you all complete. I have dropped that in the chat section that allows Intuit to track our process and how good we are doing and how great the classes that we are offering. With that being said, again, the survey is in the chat box. Please fill that out before you leave. And then I'm going to move on to our second question. And that was, in regards to references, what if they list a personal reference? What would you ask?
Really some of the same questions. I mean, I've contacted several personal references before, and I think if you can give them a question like, tell me about their motivational level, tell me about their work ethic. I mean, that right there is such a strong question when you ask about the work ethic. If it's a personal reference, they're going to be able to answer that question. Now, some of the other things they probably wouldn't be able to, but a work ethic, they would probably have an answer for that.
Great. Now, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.